Hello, everybody. If you can hear me, we're ready to get started. So jump right in and say, okay, wonderful. Now we're getting the yeses. Flavia says yes. Mohit says yes. Shivani says yes. That's great. I'm going to wait for a couple more people to say yes. Let me just see. Okay. If everybody can hear me, we're going to go right ahead and get started now.
And next thing, how far along in your GRE prep are you? Once again, you'll see some options on your screen. Just go ahead and pick the right one which suits you. That you have just started your prep, or you yet to start your prep, or you need guidance to start your preparation, or you need a proper study plan. Okay, I'll give you guys a 10 seconds. Okay, we'll just jump right in. And before we start, I have two more things that I want to tell you. First thing, we will show you a short demo video of Galvanize GRE course during this webinar. We'll also have a very special surprise for you after that. So stay tuned. Finally, there will be a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. Post all your questions in the Q&A box and our GRE expert will answer you. So without any further delay, I'll hand it over to Ram Sharma.
Hi friends. So everyone will be wondering, anyone who has taken the GRE or who is preparing to take the GRE or even thinking about GRE, their only fear would be the verbal section, especially in India where English learning is not of the highest standard. So why does GRE verbal feel difficult in the first place? GRE verbal is basically the graduate level English. It tests the graduate level English of the US standards. So Indian standards are far below the US standards, and that's why we find it very difficult. But there are also other factors, like it is not our native tongue. English is not our native tongue. So the vocabulary that we gain in our academic syllabus is not quite sufficient for the GRE level. But please trust me, once you enter the graduate level, you will be encountering a lot of new words, high funda words, which you will need to learn before you even take the GRE. So that is why the GRE is so difficult. GRE verbal is so difficult. But scoring a 160 plus score out of 170 in verbal is not so difficult. Trust me. So is a 160 plus score in GRE verbal reachable for anyone? Yes. Anyone can score a 160 plus score in GRE verbal as long as you have the time and motivation to get there. Okay. So what are the basic things you need? You must know where you stand. So you must know whether you are a 130s student or 150 student, so that you can take the appropriate measure to get to 160 plus score. And depending on where you stand, you must need sufficient time. You must have sufficient time to jump to a 160 plus score. So being at 130 or 135, you cannot aim to achieve 160 plus within a month or something. Okay. So if you are in the 150s range, then you can actually aim to get a 160 plus score within a month's time. Okay. So setting realistic expectations is one crucial thing. And the last but important thing is the right tools to get where you want. So just taking the official guide and going through the material will not be enough. So you need the right tools and right guidance to get where you want to. That is a 160 plus score in verbal. But trust me, anyone can get to 160 plus score. Okay. We are going to see what is needed to get there. But before that, it is very important to understand the field. So if you watch cricket matches, there is something called a pitch report, and there was something very similar during battles in olden days. So they would understand the field first in order to understand the terrain and therefore strategize their ways. Now, in GRE context, understanding the exam pattern is a very crucial thing. Let's look at that first so that you can get a clarity on what you need to concentrate on in order to get a 160 plus score. So in verbal reasoning, the score starts from 130 to 170. So even if you answer all the questions wrong, you'll get a 130, which is not a great thing. Okay. but it is just a consolatory thing to have something like 130. So the score ranges from 130 to 170. There could be 3 verbal sections, out of which 2 will be scored and 1 might be an experimental section. It could be an experimental or a research section. The difference between experimental and research section is one will not tell you which one is the experimental section. It could be the very first verbal section you face in your test, or it could be the last one. The research section will usually have a note in the beginning saying this is a research section. You can skip it if you want. Okay, but not many people are so lucky. Most of our people get an extra verbal section, and you wouldn't know which one is the extra section. So just be careful. Get yourself ready to face 3 verbal sections in your 4-hour tests. Okay, and each verbal section will be for 30 minutes and will have only 20 questions. So 20 questions, 30 minutes doesn't seem very difficult, but someone who has taken a sample test would know the difficulty of it. What are the 3 question types? These are the broad categories of question types. There is text completion question, where there will be text given with a blank. It could be 1, 2, or 3 blanks in the text. And based on the number of blanks, you'll have options to fill. So if it is a 1 blank question, you'll have 5 options, out of which you'll have to choose 1. If it is a 2 blank question, you'll have 3 options for each blank. The same applies for 3 blank question. So for a text completion with 3 blank question, you'll have 3 options for each blank. You'll have to choose 1 for each blank. There is sentence equivalence question type, where a very simple 1 blank question will be provided with 6 answer choices, out of which you'll have to choose 2 answer choices in such a way that the resulting sentence, when plugging in each answer choice, will be very similar. Okay, so it is the similarity of the sentence after plugging in the 2 answer choices that matters. And then the usual reading comprehension, which is found everywhere in any test, competitive exam you take. There is reading comprehension. There will be a passage followed by questions. There are different question types which will be dealt in some other webinar on reading comprehension. So these are the broad question categories. Now we come to the understanding the field part. Okay, in a given verbal section, you may have a variety of questions. You'll have 4 to 6 text completion questions per section, and then 4 to 6 sentence equivalence questions per section. So you'll have at least 8 to 12 fill in the blank type questions. Okay, and out of this, there will be not more than 2 questions with 3 blanks in it. Okay, so it is not very difficult. You can score at least 8 questions right if you're really good at text completion with 1 blank, text completion with 2 blank, and sentence sequence questions. And mastering this is very easy. Okay, we'll look at the strategy that we have to follow for text completion and sentence sequence questions later. But understand this: text completion with 1 blank, 2 blank, and sentence equivalence. These 3 question types are easy to master as long as you have the right tools in hand. Okay, so once you get there, you've secured yourself at least 8 out of 10 to 12 questions. Okay, sometimes it's 8 out of 10 or 10 out of 12 questions. So those are in your bag once you get that strategy mastered. And then half of your verbal section will be reading comprehension, which includes critical reasoning questions. So there will be like 9 reading comprehension questions with 1 critical reasoning question and such. If you're scared of long passages, just be assured of this. There will be only 1 long passage per test, not per section, per test. So if you have 2 verbal sections, you'll have only 1 long passage with 4 questions. The others will be short passages. There will be 2 to 3 questions per passage. So it is not a very difficult thing. Okay, just rest assured, you will have a lot of short passages to conquer as long as you know the strategy to conquer reading comprehension passages. We'll look at that later too. So there is this important note you'll have to know. Each section has an overall difficulty level. So an easy section will have 20 easy to medium questions, and therefore the section has a credit. So say you have 2 verbal sections in your GRE, you will be attempting 40 questions, and if you have answered 28 questions right, Okay, say you've answered 20 questions right in one section and 8 questions right in the next section. You need not exactly get 158 out of 170. If you've got 20 questions right in an easy section, then the credit for that section might be low and the credit for the next section could be high. So your score need not be equal to the number of questions you answered right. Okay, get this in your mind. Okay, so if you are answering a section really well, it means, or it most probably means it's an easy section, and the next section would be a more difficult one. So get yourself equipped for this. Do not directly correlate the number of questions you answer right with the number of points you will get. On the same line, each section has questions that carry the same point. So all the 20 questions in a particular section will carry the same number of points. So there won't be a difference. So answering a very small text completion question with one blank is equal to answering a text completion with 3 blanks. So focus on the easiest questions first, finish them all, and then move on to the difficult questions. Okay. So let's come to the point. To score 160 plus in verbal, these are the basic things you have to do. First and foremost, know where you stand. To know where you actually stand right now, don't worry if you're standing at 130 or 132 or 135. It doesn't matter. As long as you have time, you can conquer your target. Okay. So first thing first, know where you stand. Understand your strength and weakness through a diagnostic test. We offer a diagnostic test. You can take it and you can see where you stand actually. It is a pretty good measure of where you currently are in your GRE verbal preparation. Okay. And then based on your score, set a practical target date. So if you have scored a 130, at least give yourself 2 to 3 months to prepare for the GRE, especially the verbal section, if you want to score a 160 plus score. Okay. If you are in the 130s, you'll need a lot of strengthening to be done. You'll need a lot of reading to be done. So give yourself enough time. You'll need at least 2 hours a day to prepare for your GRE verbal. In that case, give yourself time. If you can spend only 1 hour a day, then extend your target date. Set a practical target date. Do not strain yourself. Do not load yourself too much. And there are 3 areas that you'll have to focus initially, at least for the first 20 to 30 days, if you are having 2 to 3 months in your plate. So what are the 3 areas? Vocabulary, reading, reasoning. These 3 are actually intertwined. So once you start preparing for vocabulary, you're also starting to read a lot. And reading does not stop with just consuming stuff. You'll be reasoning out on what you're reading. So blind reading is not going to help. Whenever you read, you understand stuff and you interact with the text. So that is reasoning. So focus on these 3 areas consciously. You'll be doing these subconsciously, but as the text gets more complex and difficult, you'll have to do it consciously. So that is what the GRE asks of you. So get that ready. Take mock GRE tests. So there are several mock tests available out there. We provide 5 full-length mock tests. They are very close to the GRE standards. So you can take them and understand where you stand. And as you take the next consecutive mock test, you can see where you stand. You can see your weaknesses, correct them, and progress. That is the last step you'll have to do. And by the last mock test, you will see that you have improved if you're doing all these steps right. So let's look at vocabulary preparation. Okay, this is a very crucial part of GRE. Like 6 years ago, the GRE exam used to be very different. It used to be totally vocab oriented. So you'll be asked synonyms, antonyms, analogies, and stuff. Now it has changed, but it does not mean it is not vocabulary oriented. It is still vocab oriented. You still need to know a lot of words that you have not learned till now. Research shows that words stick better when you learn them organically. But what is organic learning? Okay, just let's see. Do you remember how or when you learned the word experience? Does any of us remember when exactly we learned the word experience? Okay, there was this sunny day when I found this word somewhere and I took a dictionary and looked it up. Really, we just learnt it through context. We learnt it in our everyday life. Someone, a friend, a teacher, our parents used, and they kept using it here and there, and we understood the meaning of experience, right? So that is organic learning. But say there is a GRE word, sartorial or munificence. No one around me uses that word. I don't even see that in any of the texts I read. So how do I learn these words organically? But only organically learned words stick faster in my mind, right? How do I do it? So there is only one way: reading habit. Reading habit is an organic way to develop such high-level vocabulary. So you will come across words like sartorial and munificence if you read enough books. But what kind of books? You'll have to be selective about that too. So choose your sources wisely. Once you've started preparing for the GRE, and if you have enough time, if you are interested in reading fiction, then here are some suggestions. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It's kind of a science fiction, a dystopian novel. That is, nothing really great happens. It goes towards something like the end of days and something. So Brave New World. In this novel, when you start reading, you will also encounter a lot of complex sentences. Understand that when you are reading for vocabulary, you're not just preparing for vocabulary, you're also preparing for reading and understanding and reasoning. Okay. So in that sense, Brave New World has a lot of complex sentences that are frequently of the kind used in GRE. So you will also master reading sentences and stuff. The Sparrow, another novel by Mary Doria Russell. It's a beautiful novel. Again, has a lot of heavy vocabulary, and at the same time, it is given in context. So you will encounter every word 4 or 5 times in the novel, and by the end of the novel, you will at least have a very clear idea of the words, what they mean or what they could mean, something like that. You don't need to take a dictionary and look it up. As you read 5 sentences that have the same word here and there, from the context, you will learn the word. Okay. There is another novel, The Corrections by Jonathan Franzen. It's a beautiful novel. And if you are a fan of children's fiction, The Wizard of Oz vocabulary builder. So it is based on the story of The Wizard of Oz, but it is meant for people who are building their vocabulary. So it is a very innovative attempt. And it is also very useful because you learn words from context. So this is a good place to start, where you can improve both your vocabulary and reading. And meanwhile, you can also improve your reasoning. Okay. And for people who are not very much interested in fiction, who are really serious and who want to achieve things, for non-fiction readers, there are again some suggestions. The Best American Essays. This series is an annual series. It is published every year, and they'll have beautifully framed passages where the idea is developed clearly in sequential order, just like you see in GRE passages. If you look at GRE passages, you'll understand that they are basically very boring, dry stories. Okay, they are still stories. An idea would be developed beautifully in proper order. Some new information will be added in every sentence, and you will land up somewhere else than where you started. So such kind of passages will be available in these texts. The Best American Essays is one such text. And How to Read Better and Faster by Norman Lewis will help you improve your reading speed and also not compromise on your accuracy. So you can understand it better while also you're reading faster. Okay. Word Power Made Easy is another book where you can learn words to cognates, that is roots. So a root will be introduced in every chapter, and based on that root, several words will be taught to you. It's a very fun book. Okay, you can do 1 chapter a day and stuff, and you'll be done with the whole book within a month. It's a very beautiful book. And there are other articles you can follow, say for example, the New Yorker or the Guardian, for example. They'll have these articles that come out every day. You can read them, and you'll also stay abreast of what's happening around the world. while at the same time you'll be improving your reading and vocabulary. So there is this one guy, Malcolm Gladwell. He's a terrific writer, funny, and at the same time he gives you an update on what's happening in contemporary America. Okay. If you look at the GRE closely, there will be a lot of passages related to America, something to do with America's history, their civil war or civil rights movement, some things like that. So you'll have to know these things, or you'll have to at least get used to reading about the US here and there in order to be very comfortable with GRE passages. Okay. So, but if you have very little time and you're not really a reader, and if you are the kind to ask where's the time, mate, here are some shortcuts. There is Galvanize's vocabulary app. It gives you a lot of words, like 1800 hand-picked words for GRE, and these words are not just taught simply like in a dictionary. We give a proper context, so it is through a context that you learn words clearly. So we give proper context, and we also give images for people who can remember words with images or some relatable context. And there's again Norman Lewis, How to Read Better and Faster. It's a very small book. You can read it quickly, and as you read it quickly, you will learn that you can read faster. And a basic regular reading exercise for 15 to 30 minutes a day. Say if you're an ardent cricket fan, you can follow some cricket articles everywhere. And basically, if you are a tech geek, you can follow some tech articles, find the best writer in that field, follow him every day. Just 15 to 30 minutes a day reading should be enough. So the bad thing about us is we dare to say we don't have time, but if you think carefully, you'll see that 15 to 30 minutes a day is not a big part of the time you waste. Okay, so you can actually spend that on reading. And most importantly, for let it be words or sentence structures or even reasoning, for them to really stay with you, you'll have to use them. So you learn a word today, try to use it in some context today itself, so that you will remember that word really well. But what if you don't get a context? Create a context. Okay, so while you are speaking with your friend, just create a crazy context, use that word there. Just for using that word, create a context. Similarly, you find a new sentence structure, no sooner than, use it somewhere. So instead of saying as soon as I got home it started raining, say no sooner did I get home that it started raining. So use these contexts, use these sentences or words in your everyday life so that they will stick with you really well. It is by application that you make words yours. It is not just by reading through from a dictionary or something. Okay. Once you start applying, you make them yours. So the previous slides were for people who are just getting into the GRE prep. So if you're just having the idea of entering the GRE prep schema, then you can start doing that. But if you're already in your GRE prep, these are some suggestions that you have to follow. Say if you're already in your GRE prep, you'll be doing a lot of practice. You'll be taking a lot of practice assessments, tests and stuff. After every session of practice, be sure you review your mistakes and note them down. So don't feel lazy. Please make a note of what kind of mistakes you're doing. So what I used to do was, I had a spreadsheet in hand, an Excel sheet, where I would put down the question, the option I chose for that question, and why it is wrong. And I had a very finite number of mistake types that I was making. So it could be a careless mistake. It could be did not understand the question properly, or vocabulary weakness, or something like that. So if I have a countable number of mistake types in my hand, and if I know that I'm repeatedly making one mistake type, then I can focus on that and rectify my mistake. Okay. So review is a very important process of your test prep. So taking a lot of assessments and seeing no improvement, is a problem which is a result of lack of review. Okay, so do not feel lazy. As soon as you take a test, be it only 5 questions, 4 questions, doesn't matter. Have a spreadsheet by your hand. Just mark the questions that you answered incorrectly, and also mark what kind of mistake you did there. So later you can filter out and see what kind of mistakes you've been making consistently, so that you can address that issue. Okay. Take mock tests without skipping any section. So most of our students do this. They skip the analytical writing section. Okay, the first 1 hour of the test, where you'll have to do some grunt work, you'll have to type 2 essays. They skip that because they want to feel fresh when they start the verbal section or quant section. But the problem is they are actually missing the actual GRE experience. So once you go there, you'll have to sit for 4 hours. And for those 4 hours, you'll have to build your stamina. It's not just a physical stamina, there is mental stamina that is involved. So you'll have to be ready to feel fresh after 1 hour of typing. Okay, so to get there, you'll have to not skip any sections in your mock tests. So take the essays, type out your responses, do it sincerely, and then move on to your next section and see how you feel. So that is the real experience. Do not miss out on the real experience. And one crucial point is there is no negative score on the GRE, so do not skip any questions. So you're taking a section, there are 20 questions, and you've completed only 17 questions. The last 3 questions are pending, and your last 10 seconds are ticking. Just blindly click any answer choice you would like to. Do not skip any question. Your luck might be such that you could get those questions right, at least one of those questions right. So do not skip any question. There is no negative score. So just at least try your luck.
All right, guys, like Adi said at the very beginning, we do have a very quick demo to show you of our GRE prep course. So just give me a couple of seconds while I pull that up on your screens. Okay, so for those of you that asked, this is what a personalized study plan looks like. You can see that these tasks have been noted down for him for a particular day, right? So on each day, it has already been decided what he will focus on, right? So this will save you a lot of time and effort because you don't have to do that for yourself. And if you're wondering how his personalized study plan was designed, I'm going to get to that in just a bit. But before that, I wanted to show you very quickly what your lessons will look like. So if you scroll down further, you can see that there's a link here to your lessons, as well as an entire section dedicated to tips and techniques. And this is actually just to let you know how you're progressing through your course based on the targets that you set for yourself. So for instance, if you had decided at the beginning that you wanted to score a 170, this little thing here will tell you exactly where you're currently scoring right now. So it gives you a fair idea of how much you need to improve to get to the score that you want for yourself, right? Ditto for verbal, entire section for tips and techniques. You can track your progress right here at the top. And you can also see how many tests you've taken and how many of the lessons you've covered, right? Of course, there is an entire section dedicated to AWA alone. So now getting back to the question I asked at the very beginning. So using this diagnostic test, your personalized study plan will be designed. Now, this test will let us know where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and you will let us know exactly how much time you have to prepare, right? So taking those 2 things into account, your study plan will be designed to maximize the efficiency of your time and also your prep. So for instance, let me show you this. Just give me a second while this. Yeah. Okay, let's close this. Now, the very first section, you can see your total score as well as your score in the verbal and quant section each. So you can see this person, for instance, has scored a 150 here and a 161. Now, if you scroll down, the further you go, the greater the breakup, the greater the information that you get from this test, right? So if you look at this, for instance, you can see that his performance across each question type has been noted. So for instance, for reading comprehension, he got exactly 50% right and 50% wrong. Similarly, for quant, you can take a look at any question type. Let's look at quantitative comparison. He got 86% right and 14% wrong. So this will tell you where your strengths and weaknesses lie. Like I said, if you scroll down further, you can see the questions, a grade breakup, right? So in terms of the questions, in terms of the time taken, as well as your score. And if you scroll down a little further, you can also see your performance across each question that you attempted in this test and the amount of time that you spent on that question, which, by the way, is a very important metric to have for yourself. This is the same for verbal, I think. Quant, sorry. Right. So like I said, on the basis of this test, your strengths and weaknesses, as well as the time that you have, your personalized study plan will be designed for you, right? Now, let me quickly close this and get back to the PPT. So if you remember at the very beginning, we did say that we had a special surprise for you, right? So exclusive for our webinar attendees today, you will see a link in your chat boxes. Just use that link towards the end of the webinar to find out what your special offer is and how you can claim it, right? Now, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Let me hand over to Ram. Once Ram is done, guys, don't forget, post all your questions in the chat box and he will look at them and answer them as and when they come, right?
All right. Back to our tips for scoring a 160 plus in verbal. Now we are getting to a crucial part. Let's attack the question types as such. So we saw that there were text completion, sentence equivalence, and reading comprehension questions. Let's look at the first two types, text completion and sentence equivalence questions. They are both called discrete questions because they stand alone. You don't need the help of a passage in order to understand that question. Each question is a separate question, so you can attack them separately. So these are called discrete questions. All you have to do is use the 3-point rule. There is something called a 3-point rule. Okay. In text completion questions, whether it has 3 blanks or 1 blank, there is a very standard rule. That is a standard rule of sentence structure as such. Okay. So our research shows that any text completion or sentence equivalence question will have at least 2 parts, if not more. Okay. Depending on the number of blanks, it will have many parts. But out of those, there will be at least 1 part that does not have a blank in it. Okay. Say if there is a sentence, it will be separated by a comma, and there will be, say there is a very simple sentence equivalence or text completion question. It won't have a single part in it. It will have at least 2 parts in it, separated by a comma or some transition word, and 1 part will have a blank and the next part won't. It is this other part that does not have a blank that is crucial. It will carry the clue for you. Okay, so focus on that part. But before that, look at the blank, understand what could go in the blank, like what kind of part of speech. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective or an adverb? What kind of word could go in the blank, and what would it modify? If it is a noun, then understand what the noun does, because basically we use nouns in order to say what they do. Okay, so you speak about Ravana, you won't just speak about Ravana. You will say Ravana was a great king, or he abducted Sita. So there is always an action. Ravana will be doing an action. So if it is a noun that goes in the blank, see what action goes around that blank. Similarly, if it is an adjective you're looking for the blank, then see what the adjective denotes. That is, an adjective is basically a word that describes the noun, right? So what noun is the adjective describing? Understand that. So you will have the noun in the question, but you'll have a blank for the adjective. As long as you understand that it must be an adjective, then you've captured the key point. So capture that noun and see in the second part that carries the clue. The second part will definitely refer to that noun in some other way. So once you know what the second part does, you will have the clue for the first blank. Okay, this is how you crack a discrete question. Understand the part of speech of the blank and understand what it modifies, whether it's a noun or a verb or an adjective or an adverb. Understand what it modifies, and then look at the second part of the sentence and understand what is happening there. That is the clue that carries the clue for you. Okay, and this part that does not have any blank in it will carry the crucial clue for you, Understand that. Link these two parts. So link the clue with the modifier, that is what the blank modifies, and understand the relationship between them. You will be able to solve the blank. Okay. For a detailed analysis of a discrete question type, you will have a separate webinar. You can attend that webinar in order to understand this 3-point rule in a demonstration of it. Okay. And relating these two parts will help you solve the question. For reading comprehension, on the other hand, many of you will have the question how to go about reading comprehension in verbal, GRE verbal. So it will be a very dry passage on, say, marine biology, or worse, US history or literature of some novel or poem you have not even heard of. There will be a whole passage on that. So how to go about it? Understand that ETS, the organization that conducts the GRE, has a very clear idea of the students that attempt the GRE. So they know that a lot of engineers attempt the GRE, and yet why do they have literature passages in it? Because they know that it does not matter what content the passage has, it can be understood by anyone. Okay, so once you see, say there is a term feminism or Marxism or communism in your passage, if you do not know what it means, just consider it as X. Okay, they are jargons. Consider it as XYZ and understand that X was a movement that happened in 1830s to 1860s in the US in Minnesota. Okay, it is only the word that substitutes X that scares you. As long as you do not care about that word, it's fine. But remember that you have named it X. Understand the passage like that. A GRE passage is basically a story. Okay, a very dry and boring story, but it's a story nevertheless. There will be a lot of events happening, and the events will be interconnected. There will be a beginning, there will be a middle, and there will be an end. All you'll have to do is understand what is happening there. Okay, the passage may introduce a phenomenon, a very obscure phenomenon in marine biology. So marine biologists so far thought that XXX was happening under the sea for so many years. There is a new finding that shows that something is a new observation has been found recently, and this changes the perspective of the earlier understanding. So this will be the whole passage. Okay, this will be the whole first paragraph. And the second paragraph would say how it changes the earlier understanding and what is the new understanding. Okay, this is the basic happening in that passage, but this will be given in very technical terms. All you'll have to do is not focus on the technical terms and just focus on the events. Focus on the link between each sentence, understand sentence by sentence, and thereby understand the structure of the passage. So the structure of the passage I just told you about now, the marine biology passage would be giving an earlier understanding, showing a new observation, and understanding it better based on the new observation. That is the structure. Okay. So once you do this, once you understand the structure of the passage and understand each sentence, you're thorough about the subject. Okay. And any question asked will be easy for you. But it is understanding the structure that needs some practice. With some practice and with the mindset that every GRE passage is a story, you'll be able to get there. Okay. And a very, very important tip I would like to give you here is do not look at the questions till you've read the passage. I'll also tell you why. You look at a question and the question talks about some technical term in it, and your focus will be completely on the term in that passage, and you'll lose the other things on the passage. Okay. And worse, you look at an incorrect answer choice and see a term in it, and you focus on that in the passage, then you'll lose the whole question. Okay. So please do not look at the questions before you're done with the passage. Understand the passage completely, understand the story completely. Once you know the story, once you know all the events in it, you'll be able to answer any kind of question on it. Okay. So focus on getting the passage right, passage completely clear before you move on to the questions. We saw some reading tips for both discrete and reading comprehension questions. Let's see some general tips for you to score 160 plus in verbal. This might actually sound funny to you, but please realize that the difference between 150 and 160 is not in any extra preparation, any extra skill set, any extra effort you put in. The only difference is understanding the exam properly and getting the basics right. The basics, not in terms of reading or understanding vocabulary. The basics is in doing what needs to be done correctly. Okay. So these are some tips that deal with doing what you need to do in the exam. Do not look at the answer options before understanding the sentence or the passage correctly. Okay. Without getting a clear understanding of the sentence or passage, if you move on to the options, they'll be more confusing and you'll lose precious time on it. Okay. So do not look at the answer options before you get a clarity on the question. Proceed to arrive at the answer choice only by elimination. So there are a lot of careless mistakes done by students because they think the first option is right, so they do not even look at the rest of the options. Please do not do that mistake. Please make sure you look at all the 5 options. There could be one single word that could be misleading in the first option, and the last option could be the right one. Okay, so do not blindly go with your gut instinct. Look at all the options, eliminate options based on your understanding of the passage before choosing the right answer. And if it's discrete questions, plug the answer choice you have selected back in the blank and read through the sentence once to see if it makes sense. Okay, sometimes it might feel like it makes sense when you select the answer choice, but when you plug in, you might find that it is actually not fitting there. So plug the answer choices back in the blanks to see if it reads right before you move on to the next question. So these are very basic things, but very crucial things. You could earn 3 or 4 points by doing these things right. Okay. And for people who get nervous or tensed very easily, just take one question at a time. So whether it is this 3rd or 4th question in a section or the 19th or 20th question in a section, think of it as the first question in that section. Do it in a relaxed manner. Take one question at a time. And once you've crossed the question, do not think about it again. Okay. And approach every section like it's the first one. So even if it's the 4th section of your GRE exam, you've done 2 AWA sections and then 3 verbal and advanced sections, and you're coming to the last section, think of it as a fresh section. Think of it as your first section. Do not get fatigued. Please take every section as your first one. Please give your full energy on that section. Okay. Apart from the general tips, there are some time management strategies you'll have to know. So this is a very simple table you'll have to follow. Attempt the text completion questions and sentence sequence questions that have only one blank in them first. Okay, attack them first. Get them off your plate. This is the easiest kind of question you can get. You'll get at least 6 to 7 questions of these types, and you can score them very easily. Okay, so I'll tell you what is special about these question types. A text completion with one blank or a sentence equivalence question will have only one sentence in it. And to understand a sentence properly, all you need is vocabulary and a knowledge of sentence structures, different sentence structures. A sentence might start with that. Okay, that the tourists were complaining about mosquitoes was annoying the hunter. Okay, it is not a very familiar sentence structure to us, but there are only so many sentence structures available there. So with reading practice, you might get familiar with a lot of sentence structures. There are only 2 things that stand in your way in understanding a sentence: vocabulary and sentence structure. Okay, so you're in your exam hall now looking at a sentence. You take, say, 15 seconds to read a sentence, read a single sentence. Okay, say you're a slow reader, you can take 15 seconds to read a sentence. If you have not understood it, you can take another 10 seconds to read it again. Okay, if you have not understood that sentence after 2 readings, the problem could be either in vocabulary or in sentence structure. Okay, if there is some word that you do not know, then there is no way that spending more time on that question is going to help you. That is, after 25 seconds, if you have not understood the sentence because of vocabulary, you're not going to suddenly get a new idea of what that word means in that exam hall, right? So there is no point in spending more time on that question if you have a problem with vocabulary. The same applies for sentence structure. If there is a new sentence structure that you have never faced before and it is sitting in front of you, you spent 25 seconds reading it and rereading it, and you have not understood, there's no chance that you're going to understand it after that. Okay, you're not going to understand a new sentence structure without having faced it before. So if you spend 25 seconds on a text completion 1 or sentence sequence questions and you have not understood that sentence, just move on to the next question. It does not make any sense to spend more time on it. It is not going to make sense. Okay. So say after those 25 seconds, you have understood the sentence, solving it should be easy now. You can take another 10 to 20 seconds in order to solve it, but you cannot spend more than 45 seconds to solve a text completion question with 1 blank or a sentence sequence question. Okay. So understand this logic clearly. Spending more than 45 seconds for a text completion or sentence sequence question is a waste. If you're doing that, you're doing something wrong. Understand that. So attack this while you're practicing. So even when you're practicing, have a timer beside you. If it's an untimed test, have a timer beside you. See how long you take to understand a sentence and answer the question. The same logic applies for a text completion question with 2 blanks, but since it is longer and has 2 blanks, you can take 40 to 90 seconds depending on the sentence length. But finish that next. After the text completion with 1 blank and sentence sequence questions, focus on text completion with 2 blanks. All the strategies apply in the same way for these questions too. So get them out of your plate first. So this will take up to 8 or 9 questions off your plate. You'll have only 11 questions remaining and you would have sufficient time for reading comprehension. While you're doing reading comprehension, focus on the longer passages, that is passages that contain more questions first. Okay. So for this, I would suggest as soon as you start a section, look through all the 20 questions, have a blank paper by your side, look through all the 20 questions, mark each question by the question type. So first question is a TC3 question, text completion with 3 blanks. Second question is a RC question. Third is RC, and those two belong to the same passage. Fourth is another RC question, but it belongs to a different passage. 4, 5, 6, 7. Those 4 questions belong to a long RC passage. So note these things down in the very beginning. So spend 30 seconds on that. Rush through all the 20 questions. You can actually go back to the questions. On the GRE, you can navigate between questions within a section. It is only after you finish the section that you cannot go back to it. But while you're within a section, you can move between questions as you like. So go through all the 20 questions. Make a note of what question type it is, and if it's RC, how many questions belong to each batch. Okay. Doing this will be very helpful. Say if your second question is a text completion question with 3 blanks, and your 16th to 20th questions are text completion with 1 blank and sentence sequence questions, it makes more sense to concentrate on 16 to 20 rather than the third question, second or third question. Okay. So make note of these question types and then focus on the easier questions first. So the order is text completion with 1 blank, sentence sequence, and text completion with 2 blanks. Finish them. You'll have at least 20 minutes spending for RCs and text completion with 3 blanks. Okay. When you come to RCs, focus on RCs that have more questions with them. So say there is a very long passage that has 4 questions to it. Spending 6 to 7 minutes on the passage is going to help you answer 4 questions in a row. Okay. So focus on that. It is better than spending 3 minutes on a passage and then taking 2 more minutes to answer 2 questions if an RC passage has only 2 questions. So function based on the return on investment. You're investing time here. You're investing valuable time. Read a passage. If it's a long passage, read it afresh. Spend 6 to 7 minutes on it and answer 4 questions together. That is better than reading a short passage and answering just 2 questions. Okay. So focus on passages based on the number of questions and then leave the text completion with 3 blank questions for the end. Okay. Just because they are difficult, it does not mean they carry a lot of points. They carry the same number of points as a text completion question with 1 blank. So leave it for the end. If you don't have time, you can just guess the answers and submit your section. And let me tell you frankly, the chance of you getting a text completion question with 3 blanks right is 1 out of 27. So you got 2 blanks right and 1 blank wrong. It does not matter. It is a 0 anyway. So it is 1 out of 27 chances for getting it right. Why risk it? Why spend valuable time on it when you can focus on other questions that are more productive? Say even if it's an RC question, it will have 5 options. 1 out of 5 is still a lot greater than 1 out of 27, right? So spend the time on questions that have higher chance of you getting it right. Okay. So even if you do not have time for text completion with 3 blanks, forget it. It doesn't matter. But if you have surplus time, you have answered all the 20 questions within 25 minutes. You have 5 minutes. Please do not submit your section. Please go back to your questions, see if you have answered them right. Plug in the answer choices in the blank and see if it sounds right. All those things. Please do not waste any time. Use up all your 30 minutes. And if you feel tired, you can use the last 1 minute to relax. You'll get an additional minute to relax between sections. Okay. So please do not waste time on your verbal section.
Okay, guys. So if there are no more questions, I think it's time to end this webinar. And thank you, Ram, for taking your time, spending your time with us. And this is Galvanize signing off, and see you next Wednesday. Thank you.